Hi, I'm Chef Nicholas Lodge and welcome to this Flower Pro introduction of a brand new member of the Flower Pro family. I'm going to be showing you how to use the new Flower Pro Easy Flower Hoop. So this innovative hoop will enable you to make basically designer look toppers for your wedding cake with ease. So it's really innovative and can be used for craft, it could be used for cake, it could be used for home decor and all sorts of other applications. So let's get started. So these are my Flower Pro Easy Flower hoops, and as you can see there actually are three options. So first of all we have the clear acrylic. Now the clear one, alright, this one can be used with your flower spray to the left or to the right of your arrangement. So you can use this in top of a cake this way, or you can use it in this way, okay? This is good for a neutral look if you're wanting something more modern, contemporary. Obviously the clear acrylic is a really good choice, and but obviously this can be used in lots of different ways and with lots of different color combinations. Now the MDF, which is a wood composite, this is MDF. Again, when this is obviously laser cut, you're going to get this almost charring on the edge, which gives a very nice rustic look. So if you're doing like a barn wedding, rustic wedding cake, you know, naked, semi-naked cake, this works perfect with a lot of my rustic things like my antlers, my pine cones, Christmas type of arrangement, but also can be used for example for a just a normal one. So if you were doing say like a garden wedding, so this is an MDF one where I've got pink roses, anemones, berries, forget-me-nots. So again, this will obviously work very well with traditional colors as well. And like again, for a garden outside wedding, this is a nice look. Now with the MDF, so you have obviously one side is going to have this slight charring, and then the other side is going to be just plain wood. And I'm going to talk in a moment about also painting these, because you can paint these also, this wooden one. And then this is the mirror finish. Now the mirror finish you can only really use one way because the other side has the gray, which you could use, all right? But as I said, traditionally, as I said, this one I would only recommend using it with the spray this side, all right? Now when you are using the hoops, the obviously MDF is ready to go. When you're using the clear one, there is like a protective film on here. So you just need to take this off of both sides, all right? Because it's sort of cloudy, so you take this off of both sides, and that will be then ready to go, okay? And then when you do the silver one, again, this has a protective, obviously to give you this nice mirror image, and so it doesn't get scratched. You're just gonna, again, just take this off. So you're just gonna start the tape and pull this off, and this is going to come off to give you your mirror finish, all right? And so those are the sort of basically how we prep the hoops ready for use. Now Katy Sue have, obviously Katy Sue have several different types of hoops, and so in their existing range they have, these are the cake toppers, so they come in all different sizes in acrylic, and they also have in their regular ones, they have rose gold and things as well. So when actually I introduced my wedding foliage mold, this was the beautiful cake I made with the topper on here. This was actually done with the silver hoop with the Mr. and Mrs. And I actually use that on the bottom tier of the cake, so it's sort of leant up against the cake. So again, you've got lots of options in using these. And there is a separate YouTube on how to actually do this foliage hoop. The difference between this one, this is all wired onto the hoop, whereas with the Easy Flower hoop, this really means everybody can get that designer pro look with ease just by threading the wires into the holes. So this really, as I said, is not as complicated, or you don't have as much skill in floristry or taping or wiring to use the new product, okay? So really nice hoop, and can be used in lots of different ways. And there are other things we can do with the hoops. So you can, so for example, you can spray paint the hoops. So you can actually take your hoops here and you can actually spray paint this. So you could actually paint this with a spray paint. So then this would be like a painted version. So I've just spray painted this. You could also do with like shabby chic look, whitewash look. You could actually take some sort of glaze or some chalk paint and you could go over this just lightly. So you're gonna sort of still see the sort of MDF underneath it for a really nice, for a rustic wedding. But of course, these could be spray painted in all different color combinations. You could do sponging techniques, faux finishing. So there's lots of ways to do this. You can also, even with this one, for example, you could do this in say gray, and then you could put glue on there, and then you could sprinkle silver glitter on there. So if you wanted it really blinged up, there's lots and lots of ways of using these, all right? So the MDF one is the best one to use for painting. Now, also other things you can also do is, for example, you can take ribbons So for example, this is like a sort of a mauve colored ribbon, sort of similar color to what I have actually in the spray here. Same sort of like color ribbon. So this would be a nice alternative if you wanted to bring in some obviously ribbon color to match your contrast color. You can just literally, all I did there, made a little knot on the ribbon and threaded it through. I just used your companion tool, or like for example a scribe needle or a pin, a needle, just sort of push that through. And then of course you could thread this through in a contrast color. All right, and you can wrap this all the way around. Now this serves not only decorative, but also an alternative to sort of wiring things. And if you're using lots of smaller flowers, you can actually just tuck the little wire stems, you can actually tuck those in amongst the ribbon. A little bit more like the technique I used for my, my wedding foliage one. You could also do, this is for example, some twine. So you could use some sort of twine, again, if you're doing a rustic look. This works really well with like things like my antlers, my pine cones, for that more rustic look. So if you were doing a wedding, like for example, this is a wedding cake knife where I actually wrapped twine around the handle for a sort of barn wedding I did. And so if you're going for that sort of look, this is another way of obviously adding that little sort of rustic element here. And then of course, again, you can tuck things in amongst the ribbons and the twine, as well as obviously using the holes here as well. Okay, and then there are also other things you can buy on the market. These are used for floristry. So it's like colored wire for flower arrangements, and it comes in metallic, and this is all flexible. Red, you know, here we have like a metallic purple color. So again, this is a nice way. For example, you could do that on the MDF and wrap this around instead of the floral tape I'm going to show you next. This is a good way to bring in color, and this would be fun on, say, for example, a 40th wedding anniversary topper, or if you were doing like a rustic Christmas topper, a holiday topper for a cake with poinsettias and berries. This ties in very, very nicely with that whole look. So now we're going to move on to prep some wires. Now, if you've watched my wedding foliage hoop, this is very much the technique I use there to give some additional sort of support for the flowers, but also if you don't have flowers with tendrils, then this is a good way just to bring in that little sort of nice element at the end. Now, floral tape, I'm using half-width floral tape. I'm using here light green, but you can also, for example, do brown, you could do gray. We also have floral tapes available. You can buy in colors, like in pink, it comes in silver, in gold, so yellow, lots of different options there. So what we're going to do here is I'm using here a 26 gauge wire. Okay, so generally 26. If you were doing sort of heavier flowers, you could use a 24, but generally a 26 is nice and easy to wrap around. So all I'm doing here is I'm just going to tape from the bottom of the wire to the top. And then when I get to the end of the wire, okay, so when I get to the end of the wire there, I'm just going to carry on twisting with my floral tape, very much like I make my pine needles. If you watch my Nicholas Lodge collection, pine cones, you just literally just twist in the floral tape here. And if you don't have, if you've already got some wires covered, you can just make these tendrils separately. So see, this is where the wire finishes. And then what you will then do is you'll take your companion tool, and literally I'm just going to wrap this around the companion tool like this. This is how we do like sweet pea tendrils. So when you take this off, you're going to get these like just these little curly cues. And then you can also add some additional ones of those if you want to, like a couple of these down the stem. So again, just going to go around a couple of times with some floral tape. Just going to take your tape and again, just going to start twisting. So you see how I'm just literally twisting between my fingers here. And this is going to give me my little tendril here. All right, you can just make those as long as you want. And again, we're just going to take your tendrils. So being that they're just floral tape, they have a nice soft organic look to them. And you can do like 2 or 3 little tendrils on here, you see? So again, but this isn't actually always necessary. In fact, the 2 hoops I have here, I don't have tendrils on them. The one that I have here, because this has got like a eucalyptus leaves, the eucalyptus has these tendrils at the end of it. You can see they're just like wrapping around the stem here. But in the other spray I have here, and this one here, you can see I've just obviously got here my fern. So I have a fern at the top and the fern at the bottom. But I could totally add some little tendrils there as well. But it does add a nice sort of organic look to the arrangement. But as I said, this is very easy to work with. And if your fingers are a little sticky with the floral tape, if you just take a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch on your fingers, that will just help you get a little bit of traction. But as I said, this is how we do when we do grapes, and when I do, for example, like sweet peas, and twist the floral tape also for my, when I do my pine cones as well, my pine cones and needles. So here you can see we've got the little tendrils there like that, okay? But you can see like that would be a brown one. So you've got lots of different choice there, and you can also just use the green wire as well. Now, in addition, when we are putting the flowers on, you might need to put some wires around the hoop to sort of just help to secure flowers. As you go, so it's a good idea to have some covered wires as well, but you can also just stop and make them as you need them as well. So as you can see with the hoop, all right, the Easy Flower hoop, there are these holes, all right, which obviously you've got 4 small holes each side. And then you obviously have this configuration of holes. So, but this can be used in, as I said, lots of different ways, all right, as far as like you can just put single flowers in here, like little blossoms, like forget-me-nots. And for craft application, you could just glue those in. Make sure you use a glue that's suitable for acrylic, for example. On the rustic wood one, you could just use a PVA glue. But, and then of course here, you could just do like maybe 2 roses or a peony or a larger flower here as well. So this would work for more of a contemporary with fewer flower arrangement also. And you can see here, like, if you just use like a couple of large peonies and then like, for example, some foliage, you could actually, the foliage will also cover over those hoops, you see? So you can actually then, those small little holes in the end here, the 4 holes and 4 holes, you could have peony leaves there and peony leaves there. All right, then you could just have maybe like 2 peonies. So this works really. And remember this, the acrylic one and the MDF one, you can use this way or you can use this way, all right? So of course, like, so for example, this spray here, all right, you can see how this is a spray here. This is obviously used this way, all right? But you could also do it the total opposite way as well, all right? So really it depends on what way you want this to go onto your cake. Of course, you can use this for home decor as well. You could put this into a vase, and I'm going to talk a little bit about displaying these as well afterwards. But so you're going to take your hoop here, all right? And so with my hoop, now as far as your flowers go, when we are making, for example, roses, all right, if you follow my, Flower Pro roses, so this is like, for example, a David Austin rose made in my Flower Pro Ultimate Members Club. So just like in my roses in book 1, when you generally make roses, you're going to be adding extra wires to make the rose stems look thicker. But because we have to actually thread these through the holes, when you're doing things like your roses, you just want to use a single, like 20 gauge wire in the case of the medium-sized rose. You don't add the extra wires, all right? Because if your wires are too thick, it makes it difficult to bend these in. I'm going to use a couple of ferns, all right? So I'm going to start off with my ferns. So I have my ferns here. And again, when you make the ferns, all right, the ferns are on, obviously we've added like a 22 gauge wire there. So you can take that wire, and then you're just going to just thread the wire through, and just using your tweezer or pliers, in the case of obviously something heavier, I'm just going to put the wire through. So you see how I've just threaded the wire through there like so. And then I can just literally just take this wire here and just going to cut this. So you see what I've done is I've just wrapped this around, all right? So you see this is going to form the, so you see literally, as I say, just going in and out of the holes. And then I'm going to then balance that with another fern the other side. So you see I'm just going to go through. And then literally, as I said, with your pliers, just bend that at an angle. So this will just sort of sit flat against the, and then again, I'm just going to come around here. So this is a 22 gauge wire, so this is going to just give me the shape. So you see how I've actually sort of formed the hoop here, so you can see how I've got the hoop there. And again, you can just take these, just use some wire cutters. I'm just going to take those. This will give me my, as I said, my fern. So this is really just obviously giving me my foundation, okay? Now, so in a case like this, you would probably need to use, obviously you'd have like even numbers, like, it's obviously got 2 ferns, 1 fern here and 1 fern there, because it's a nice way. But you could also totally just use 1 fern at the top and then a rose leaf there. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. Now I'm going to add in my rose bud. So I'm going to add in a rose bud. But you see the technique is you basically pull it through, all right? And then with your pair of pliers, going to bend it up So you see how, and then again, I'm just going to wrap around here. You see? And you can actually also tuck. So for example, you can tuck wires into here as well. But just trim things as you go, because the back of this will just have a sort of like almost a little bit like a vine look to it. But you see how those are sort of staying on here totally, they're totally stable on here. And so then what I'm going to do then, I'm going to add some leaves. So I'm going to put in a small set of leaves here. So I have a small set of leaves. I'm just going to trim these down. So just trim these down. And then these are going to tuck. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to actually just tuck that in, just tuck that underneath. So you see how what I've actually done is I've just threaded that. So you just tuck that wire underneath, and then you see how that's going to give stability. So just make sure that everything seems nice and stable. Now you can also, when you're doing this, if you're doing to put flowers in more just upright like that, you can even get away without using a calyx on them, you see? So you can do it without using a calyx on if you're going to just sort of have flowers like peonies or roses upright. So again, it depends a little bit on what sort of detail you're going into. And of course, this could also be used for silk flowers as well. Obviously, the Flower Pro is beautiful to use for this because it emulates sort of more of a natural look, but you could totally do this with silk flowers. You can even use this for fresh flowers as well. And I'm just going to add, so I'm just going to put down here, I'm going to add another smaller rose leaf. So again, you see, I'm just going to tuck that. So you can see here where the wire is there. Just going to just tuck that. So this makes it very easy to do. You see, then the leaf will just sort of sit onto there like so. Okay, so you're just going to have the leaf there. So you'll have your little leaf, and that will sit into there. So just make sure everything feels quite sort of tight. Now, when you are, have like, for example, things here where you have little loops that you want to just secure, you can also just take, for example, just like a piece of the wire we covered with the floral tape, and you can literally just almost make just like a little wire, just twist tie, like just twist that around. See, and that will help to secure that in. You can just tuck that into. So you can do this as you go if you need to. You can do that with obviously the wires, and then you can just sort of trim these off. You see. And then also with the one with the tendril, you see, this can be used. For example, you can take this wire here. So if you wanted like some tendrils and things, you could actually just take this in. And then you see you can actually use this to help to secure the wires as well. But you see how you can actually just sort of wrap this around. You get this sort of very sort of nice organic sort of feel to this. So you're just going to just wrap your little tendrils, your little curlicues around there, you see? So you're going to get this sort of nice look. So you can see how these will just sort of wrap around like this. And then we're just going to continue now. So going to put in, so going to do a stephanotis here. So I'm going to add a stephanotis to my, so again, these are sort of more like your filler flowers. So this is obviously made from an ultimate filler flower mold. So you can just tuck this in. Again, you can just sort of tuck the wire. So just going to tuck your wire into the little holes, you see? So literally, as I said, just going to put them into the holes there just to secure your stephanotis. You see they will stay there beautifully, you see? So nice and stable. I'm going to go on to put on, so I'm going to do a calla lily here. So I'm going to add a calla lily. Now, so the calla lily is going to sit into here. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm going to make the sort of central part quite symmetrical. All right, so you see how you've got this sort of central hole, you have 4 holes and one each side. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to put my calla lily onto here. And I'm just going to just tuck that wire into there, you see? And you can just twist these around. So you see how what you're doing is you're just creating this, just sort of wrapping this around like so. This is going to sort of sit into here. And then I'm going to take my other calla lily. All right, so that's going to go in the same hole on the other side here. Now these flowers I'm working with here, these ones are actually air drying clay. So these are made with hardy clay. And of course you can do these. I'm going to also show you a sugar one as well. But But just if you have, you know, when you're doing the flowers, if you're making flowers specifically for this, you would generally speaking, you're going to use, just you don't want too strong of wires, okay? So you can see how I've got my calla lily here now. Then I'm going to take another stephanotis. All right, so I'm just going to I'm going to thread my wire through here so I can have my stephanotis can come into here. Just going to just bend the... Nice thing about the air drying clay flowers is they're a little bit, obviously, you know, it's a little bit like working with silk flowers. They're not quite as fragile. So you just going to wrap this in here like so. So you see how I've got my calla lilies here like this. All right. Now I'm going to take going to use my roses. So I'm going to take my rose here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the rose here. And the roses, you can pull those down. So you see how the rose will actually sit the calyx. Now, again, if you were making flowers specifically for this project, all right, you can actually do this without the ovary, all right? So because if you have the ovary on there, it's like a little bit of a ball shape. If you actually make these specifically to put in the hoop, you can actually do those without the ovary on them. And then the rose will be a little bit, obviously go a little flatter against the piece here. All right, so see how you're going to put your rose on there. So then I'm going to do another rose onto here. So I'm going to do that rose here. So I've got my roses on. So you see how you're just going to put your roses on here. Just going to tuck your wires. So you see, it's really easy to do because all you're doing is you're just really threading the wires through. Now, of course, as I said, this back part here, it just will end up when it's finished, just like almost like a vine, okay? But remember, that would ultimately be the back of your spray anyway. And then I'm going to add in here, so I'm going to put in add some stephanotis. Again, because the stephanotis, you can just thread those in. So I'm going to put in a stephanotis bud into there. So I just have my stephanotis bud. So that's going to sit into there. Just get in my sort of foundation of what I'm going to use to fill in. And then I'm going to take some rose leaves here. All right, and I'm going to put some rose leaves into there. Just sort of work that into your spray. And again, you can use some wire as needed. So you can use some wire. So I'm just going to thread some wire through here. Again, this is just going to give me that sort of, will just help to hold the leaves into position, okay? So it's just a question of just tucking things in as you need them to go, all right? So I have so you can see here, I'm starting to get my spray together now. But whereas using traditional wiring techniques, you know, when you're doing, for example, more like wiring, that takes a little bit more effort. This is nice because it's sort of very easy for anybody to do. Remember, don't cut the wires too short, and then you can just sort of tuck things in as needed. So I'm going to put in some of my gypsophilia, my baby's breath is going to sit into here. And we're just going to tuck some. So you're just going to work on your, you know, just going through your flowers here. And just sort of see where your wire comes out, and then you're just going to grab so here, this is the baby's breath wire. I'm just going to pull that out here. Just going to tuck that in. So you'll have your baby's breath there. Again, just trim as you need to. Just sort of trim as you need to here. All right, so you can see how it's taking shape, and sort of you're getting that nice look there of your spray. Okay, and then I want to obviously come out a little bit here, so I'm going to use some hydrangeas. So I've got sort of 2 little clusters of hydrangeas here. So I've done this with sort of then I'm going to show you how to also do some wires as well. So just going to just tuck this in. Because your wires in the center part there are quite tight, you can just sort of pop these pop these in so you see how your hydrangeas will sit out here. I'm going to put some more hydrangeas here as well. So just a question of just, you know, just tucking the wires in and just threading the wires in to this piece here. All right, so I'm going to have my hydrangeas there. These ones, just want to push in just a little bit more. Here we go. So you see I've got my hydrangeas here like that. So you see I've added my hydrangeas at the top here. I'm just going to tuck those in. So remember, the air drying clay I'm using is obviously a little bit more forgiving than sugar. So you just, if you're doing a sugar one, just have to be a little bit more careful. And air drying clay is obviously perfect to use on a cake. I mean, it's a non-toxic product, but also the nice thing about doing this type of arrangement, this makes a really nice keepsake. So the customer, the bride, can obviously keep this afterwards. It's a very, very nice way to obviously have a nice keepsake. And this looks really stunning on top of the cake. And then of course you can, so I'm just going to just tuck in some of the baby's breath here. I'm going to put in, so you see how I'm just working with my, and just sort of overlook your spray. I mean, just sort of see how things are. And again, just tuck your wires through. So just is a question of just wrapping wrapping the wires around, all right? But you want to start off with getting things in position first, and then you can, once you get sort of the basic, sort of your basic idea and shape, then you can just obviously just move things around as needed, okay? And of course, if you were using a flower like, let's say for example, these are sweet peas, you see they've already got tendrils. So if you had, say, sweet peas at the top and sweet peas at the bottom, then of course you can just wrap those around and the buds and things will wrap around the top. So those will really, as I said, sort of help to finish things off, okay? I'm gonna put a stephanotis bud here. So I'm just gonna just thread this through. So just gonna have the stephanotis bud. And just trim your wires as needed, all right? So you can just trim your wires as needed as you go with the spray, okay? And I'm gonna have another set of rose leaves. So I've got a set of 3 leaves here. Remember, don't cut wires too short, all right? Now, something else, you know, with the acrylic, generally once you finish this, you're gonna just use a, for example, just a soft cloth, or just to get rid of the fingerprints, because you're naturally going to get little fingerprints onto here. So here I'm going to bring in my rose leaves there. So see the rose leaves are going to sort of finish off the spray here. All right, you can see how the sort of how everything's coming together, okay? And so then you're just going to do a sort of an overview of how, you know, how this is going to look. And then I'm going to show you how to make some ribbons. And of course, ribbons are a nice way to accent this. So moving on to some ribbons, I have here a grosgrain ribbon in a sort of bright green, which ties in nicely with the ferns and my color palette from the Cowleys. So I've measured this basically 24 inches or about 60 centimeters, all right? So just basically using my size guide or a ruler. And when we make the ribbon loop, what we're going to do is going to hold this in the middle, okay? And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure 10 centimeters or 4 inches from the middle of the ribbon, okay? So I'm right-handed, so I've got my thumb and the first finger of my left hand, thumb underneath, and then my first finger on top. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure 4 inches or 10 centimeters from here. And then this thumb is on the top and the first finger underneath. So my thumb on my left hand is underneath, my thumb on my top on my right hand is on top. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do this. So I'm going to actually just click my thumbnails together. So you see how you just take this and you just twist this over. So what that does, that creates your loop, all right? And this is what we call a figure-of-8 loop. So you create this loop, and then you're going to then just twist the ribbon. So what you're doing is you're doing like a mirror image. So you just twist it. So you see how you're doing a mirror image. So this is called a figure-of-8 loop, all right? So you have loop, loop, and the tail. And then with the other end of the ribbon, you twist. And then the other end of the ribbon, you twist. All right, so what you actually do there is you have what we call double figure-of-8. And then we're going to take the ribbon here, okay? And then you're going to place the wire on the top, All right, this is a 26 gauge wire. Place this on the top, turn it around, and then you're going to then just twist this together. So twist this together nice and tightly. And you're going to again just cut this to, you know, approximate length you think you need. We're going to take some floral tape, and I'm just going to just tape this. Of course, you can use green or white wire here, depending a little bit on the color of the ribbon, but you're just going to tape down here. And then you can trim these as long as you want. So you can do, we're going to do what we call a French cut. So that means we're going to cut like a swallowtail type of cut. So you see how you're going to do like one cut this way, one cut that way. And these will be your ribbon loops, okay? And I'm going to use these in amongst my flowers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just add some ribbons. So I'm going to use some ribbons here. So I'm just going to tuck these in to my spray here. So I'm actually just going to come through the, so I'm actually coming through the back here. So I'm going to just add a longer one here. Again, just tuck that in. It doesn't matter if you have any, like just some odd white wires, you know, like from your ribbons or that. But the other thing is I would generally try and keep your all of your flowers with the same sort of color. You know, these were all done in light green floral tape because if you have sort of some in moss green and some in brown and whatever, so generally just try and keep your colors throughout there. And I'm just going to add another ribbon up here. So again, you're just going to sort of just see where your holes are. There we go. So I'm just going to thread this through. Just going to tuck this through a hole here. There we go. Just going to bring this through. So you can see, so you can add some, so I can add some, obviously a little bit of ribbon at the top here. And I have my baby's breath here. Going to open these up. So you see, so you can sort of add some ribbons at the top. These are just done with shorter stems on here. So all you do is you just cut the, when you put in the ribbons up, like more towards for filler, you're just going to use your, cut these shorter, okay? And I'm going to put another one in here, which is going to just sort of finish this off. But you just have to just sort of thread this through. So remember, this can just be threaded through the wires. There we go. So see where the other end comes out of that. There we go. This will just sort of fill in with your ribbons there, and they'll stay in place really easily because you know you've got like your tight wires there. See how you're just going to have your little tendrils onto here like this. So you see, I've added the ribbons here. So you see the ribbons are going to sort of help to fill in the top of this, all right? And then if you have any, you know, any sort of wires at the back here, you can just obviously, you really won't notice those because of the fact they're green. And of course on a MDF one or whatever, you're just going to have that sort of natural look as well. But just if you have any, just make sure all your wires are secure, okay? And if you need to trim off any wires, you can do as needed. Okay, and then just going to just tweak everything just to make sure it looks nice as far as your spray goes. Here I've got my obviously hydrangeas here. And then that would be sort of how you would finish off your loop. And then just take a soft cloth and just use this to get rid of any fingerprints, all right? Because you obviously don't want to have fingerprints onto here. And if you're setting this up at a wedding, what I would use is put on some basically cotton gloves. So once you've got this cleaned, you know, just put on a pair of cotton gloves. And then the thing is then when you're handling this and using it into a cake, you're not going to have any issues with getting the fingerprints on there. So that is my first spray. All right. So this one, of course, as I said, this is all done in air drying clay. Okay. So I'm, as I said, showing you obviously this first one, and I'm going to now show you one in sugar, and then I'm going to show you how I use these put into a cake. So here I've started on a sugar one, so very much like I showed you on the air drying clay. So here I'm going to use sweet peas. So I have sweet peas. These were a project done in our Flower Pro Ultimate Members Club. And so these are obviously all sugar here. And so what I've done is I've just threaded through the sort of the first of the larger holes here and done the same already on the other side. So then when you do something like a sweet pea, you can just gently bring the sweet pea under. Now, of course, you have to be a little bit more careful with because we're using sugar here. You see how you just would wrap those around and sort of see how the sweet peas will just be entwined to the hoop. And here I'm using the mirror finish one, okay? And so this will be, and of course you can do this with gloves, or you can just sort of clean this up afterwards. You can also take a little Q-tip or cotton wool bud and then just use that to clean up as well. All right, so you can see, so basically what we've done here is you filled this up, and then your leaves would be used just to fill in so you really won't see those small holes because they're going to be obviously covered with your sweet peas. Now here I have this is like almost a sort of a freehand leaf, and so I've got this here, and so I'm just going to just take this. But generally speaking, it's more suitable to use things that are not on really, really strong wires, okay? Because with this technique of using the bending them and things like that. But you see how you're just going to just sort of put the leaf into here. Again, I'm just going to bring this wire around. And just sort of make sure that it crimps. Just be careful here. Now also, these are strong, but you don't want to just hold it by this, all right? You want to just sort of support this with your hand, and so then you can just pop so you see my sweet peas will be in here, all right? And of course with sugar ones, just going to just be a little bit more careful here, like this. And I'm going to put in a leaf. So this is going to be a rose leaf. So I'm just going to tuck this in. You can also, if you have a piece of thick foam, like convoluted foam or just a thick foam or a pillow, just to lay this on, because like if you suddenly get cramp or you need to just lay this down, just want to lay it onto a foam surface. But you see how, again, you see how I'm sort of, so this one is very much, I'm doing more of a mirror image. So if you think of this side and this side, I'm just emulating the same look each side, okay? So I've got the sort of same number of components of sweet peas. Here I have rosebud. So this is going to be the David Austin rosebud. So I'm just going to just tuck this in. Again, I have a rosebud each side. It's going to just sort of come out here. And again, I'm going to come out, and then you can just thread your wire through to secure that, okay? And remember the rosebuds are on, they're just on a single 20 gauge wire. So again, you can see how now what I've done is I've almost like sort of balanced the two sides of my components here. And then you're going to take your leaves here. So I'm actually going to just use so I have here a set of 3 rose leaves, but I'm actually going to use them singly. So I'm going to use actually 2 leaves are going to come in here. So I'm actually going to use just 2 rose leaves. So you see how what that's going to do, that's going to sort of fill in that part of and it's going to come through the middle one. There we go. Just going to pull that in just gently. You see how I'm just going to pull this through until this sort of sits into here. So this is going to just sort of fill in that center part. And again, I'm just going to tuck that over. You see that secures everything beautifully. So you see how I've got the piece here. And then I'm going to put my third leaf is going to come from the side here, because I'm going to just sort of have another leaf coming out here, and then the rose are going to just sit in the middle. So what I've done here is I've made a foundation for my rose. You see how what I've done there is I've got 3 single, this is the extra large Flower Pro leaf. So basically I've used the leaf singly. These 2 are taped together, okay? So this spray also uses fewer flowers, all right? So it just gives you an idea about if you were doing just sort of something for a wedding with fewer flowers. And then here I have a David Austin rose. So David Austin rose is going to go right into the middle, ring here, which is going to be the same one I have with my here. Just going to move your rose leaves to the side there. Just going to tuck those in. And again, as I explained on the previous one, if you were doing this purposely to go into this spray, what I would do there is I would use, I would just not put the ovary on your rose, so that then this will come into here. Just get that nice and tight, and just going to bend that over. So this will just secure this into place, okay? And of course, so you can sort of see how your David Austin rose would sit here, you see? But and then you could add some ribbons here. So I'm just going to put in this is just an organza, so almost like a blush color. So just sort of ties in with the color scheme here. Just going to tuck that into here. Just going to tuck that. Literally, I'm just going to tuck that into my wires. So it's going to just sort of sit into the center part here. If you find that your wires are a little bit short, like for example on your ribbons, you could also just add a little bit of a stronger wire. This would be done with, for example, like a 24 gauge wire or a 22 gauge wire. So this is very much like a flower arrangement. And the nice thing about this is that, things are not sort of like set until you've sort of got them in place. And then of course you also have the advantage of using this. See, so I can tuck these through. So I can tuck my ribbons through here. Just going to put my blush ribbon. You see how I've just sort of added my blush ribbon here. Okay, you see how my blush ribbon just sort of finishes off that part of the spray. And again, you can just clean that up. So, as I said, if you can just put on some cotton gloves, and then you can just use some cotton gloves. You can just sort of clean this with some cotton gloves, or you can use, as I said, a Q-tip or a cloth here. You can use with basically clean silver, handle silver. Just going to just make sure that everything looks good there. And this is how you would do. So this shows basically a sugar spray here, ready to go into our cake. Now, to put this into a cake, first of all, you want to find a straw. Now, these are actually bubble tea straws, so they're used for bubble tea. So you can find these online, but also you can find them obviously like in Asian supermarkets, grocery stores as well. But it's called a bubble tea straw. And these are food grade, and this is what you want to use this on a cake. So you see this one particular fits in perfectly into the bubble tea straw. Of course, you can get bigger size ones, and because we're going to fill this with sugar paste or rolled fondant, this is a large poly dowel. All right, so again, these are food grades, so you can also use these as well. All right, so basically what you do is you cut this to the depth of your cake. So I'm going to show you here on a cake here. So I've got here a tall cake here. So obviously I've cut this to basically just about the depth of the cake. All right, and then what we would then do is you would take your straw and you take just some leftover sugar paste rolled fondant from the project. And then what I want to do here, and you can actually do this in advance, all right? So you can actually, this can actually then set up and become hard. And so what you do is you're just going to roll out your paste, just quite thick, like a little hamburger patty. And then on one end of this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a plug, just a plug of the sugar paste like this, all right? So that's just going to sit into the end there like so, all right? Now, once you've got this done, usually I let this set, all right, because obviously if you let it set hard into there, but you don't usually have to use anything to glue it in. And then what we want to do is you want to make a hole into the actual top of your cake. So you want to find something, this is a medium pin, something about the same proximate size as the straw. Things that work well around the house would be like a wooden spoon handle, sort of just something that's about the same size as the diameter of this. All right, and then what you would then do is you would take your cake, and with your cake there, you'd make a hole into the top of your cake, and this would go through to the bottom of your cake. You take this out. So what this is doing is going to sort of accommodate your straw. And then you take your straw and you'd insert your straw into the cake, all right, which I've already got one in here. All right, so you insert this into the cake. So what that's going to do, that's going to stop the cake going up into here. So you're just going to make a hole and then put this in, and you're just going to push this in with your just to make sure it should be flush level. If it is a little bit tall, then just cut that off with a pair of scissors. These are very easy to cut. Now, what you then would do is you would take your spray. So I'm going to show the spray I just finished with the David Austin Rose. And what I have here is I have just a little piece of some sugar paste in the same color as I covered the cake with. So I'm going to just take my, sort of check and see how that looks into the top here. All right, so it's going to just sit into here like so. And remember, this could go, of course, this would be like on the top tier of a wedding cake, but this could also go up against the side of the cake. So if you watch my foliage video, and then all I'm going to do here is if it's a little bit loose, all right, and usually just to fill this in, you're just going to take just a little tiny piece of your paste, and then using like your Dresden tool, you're just going to just push this into the back here, like so. All right, so just going to fill that in with a little bit of your paste like this, all right? So what you're doing is you're just filling in the back part there flush. And if you have too much paste, you can just use like your little scraper just to trim that off. So using your little Flower Pro scraper, just if you've got too much paste there, you're just going to just trim that off. You see, so I've just done that on the, just on one side of it, and that just helps to make that nice and secure on the top of the cake. So you see that's not going anywhere, it's nice and stable. And that is how you would prepare your piece will go into a cake. But remember, you should never put things directly into the cake surface. You always need to use, obviously, straw, all right? But I said they're very easy to find. And what this will do, this will obviously give you a food-safe barrier between your, your acrylic or your MDF and your, obviously, cake. All right, so that would be sort of course, like if this was a single tier, it's going to be like, for example, like a anniversary cake. You could put this obviously on a nice pedestal stand, but this is how you would obviously put this on your cake. All right, so here you can see you have the beautiful, as I said, the Flower Pro Easy Flower Hoop. And once you get it into position, you can then obviously just tweak this and move things around as needed. And of course, you could also, like on the back here, if you needed to, you could tuck some more smaller leaves, all right? So if of course, most times you're not going to see the back of this because typically at a wedding, a cake is often set up. But if the cake was, say, in the middle of the room, then what you could do is you could also do almost like another smaller version on the back here, and you could just use some small little filler flowers. You could then tuck in some leaves and foliage here, and then obviously some more ribbons if needed. So that is how you would put the flowers onto a cake. So when you, of course, take the flowers off the cake, when you take them out of the straw, then you could use a little, like, for example, acrylic stand. So this type of little stand we could use. And then, of course, you could just pop that into there. And then, again, you could put a little tiny bit of paste in there or go around a couple of times with some floral tape to make it stable. But, of course, then the client could keep this, like on, say, sort of in a bathroom. Like this is obviously air drying clay, so these type of flowers could be kept in a bedroom or a bathroom. You could obviously put this in a little stand. You can also, for example, use a flower vase. So for example, you could take this is just a vase, and what I've done there is I've put some ceramic, these are just ceramic baking beans, all right? You can also use things like rice and things like that. I've also put a straw in there, all right? So basically, with a straw in there. So again, you could take this off, and then again, this could just go into here like this. So again, somebody could then use that as a, as I said, as a display, you see? So you're just gonna put that into there. Just sort of make sure you just move things so that everything sort of sits into there. So you could have that into a display. You can also use, for example, other things, like you can take just like a flower pot. You could put some styrofoam in the bottom of this, some styrene, some styrofoam. You could fill this with, for example, little pebbles. You can also buy, for example, this is like, for example, vase filler. It's like basically like almost a colored sand used to fill flower vases. You could use a crystal vase, and you could then put little glass beads in there. Just something to give weight and stability, because obviously if it just sits in a vase, it's gonna go. And then you can use, this actually is for putting pencils in. So it's like actually like a little pencil to put small pencils in. And you can also just do things like this. I filled this with rice. I just cut a little rectangle in the top here. So again, you see, then I could just take this, and then my arrangement could just go into here. So again, if you had a sort of, that was your color scheme, this would be obviously fun way for somebody to take this off of the cake and then be able to keep these. But as I said, these can be used on home decor. And then the other thing with this is you could actually put this into, for example, a grapevine wreath. You could obviously, as I said, add other elements here, little bows and things to this as well. So this is sort of how you would, generally when you take it off of the cake, this is sort of how you would then display them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video of how to use my Flower Pro Easy Flower Hoops, which will give your flowers a real designer look with, and look like a pro's made them very easily. Remember, these can be made with obviously air drying clay. You can make them with sugar. And I hope you'll have a lot of fun, obviously using them, whether it's the MDF, the clear, or the silver mirror finish one, whatever type of design. Remember, it can be used contemporary, more rustic, traditional. So have a lot of fun. So till next time, this has been Chef Nicholas Lodge. Sweet wishes. See you soon. Bye-bye.